Well, thank you for coming on the show. So I was reading your bio, and obviously very, very similar, I believe, in our philosophies and how we handle addiction and that sort of thing. And you got into this field because of your own struggles and overcoming of addiction, correct?
Yes, correct. Yeah, I got sober 12 years ago.
Nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, okay, was it part of your upbringing? Were you using from a young age, or did that happen when you started being a model? You were sort of exposed to stuff.
No, it was very early on. I think I had my first beer when I was 8. I was a full-blown alcoholic by 12. Yeah.
Full-blown alcoholic. Wow.
Yeah. And it was weird because I was also like an exceptional athlete. Like they were prepping
Mm.
me for the Olympic softball team. And then I'd just go home and just slam like the worst jungle juice you could ever imagine. I mean, I just poured whatever I could, which is funny. I didn't even need to hide it. I grew up with parents that were alcoholics. Like I could have done like something classy instead, but
Instead of like Frisco's or Mad Dog 2020 or ew,
dude, so gross. But yeah, so
Pabst, like, yeah.
ugh.
I think the first thing I ever got drunk on was like wine in a box. And I'm like, I've never been able to drink wine since. I can't even smell wine. It just grosses me out because of that.
Like was it Francisco or it was Franzian or
Oh,
some
yeah, yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Franza. Ugh. Yeah.
Very familiar.
So were you drinking because of the pressure, you think, or you're just having fun? Because it
Um,
doesn't sound like it was necessarily a social thing if you were, coming home and slamming the alcohol.
no, the first time I mean, I had a beer when I was 8 and it was like a Zima, you
Hmm.
know. But the first time I drank, I was 12. So gross. I had like 14 Bud Lights and
Mm.
then puked for like 3 hours and just couldn't wait to do it again. I mean, it was instantaneous for me. I was like, wow, this is the best thing in the world.
Wow.
So it was never social. I mean, I drank a lot socially. And then I drank home alone. I drank when I was happy, sad. Like I just
Didn't
was
matter.
always, yeah,
Did you just
truly.
stay with drinking, or did you graduate to, other stuff?
When I was 16, no, 15, I went to a boarding school, which was awesome.
Mm.
Um, I went to school with like Carlos Santana's niece, a bunch of people from like Saudi Arabia, these sheiks, oil
Mm.
sheiks, kids, the head of Mexico Coca-Cola production, their daughter. So I was with like the richest, most diverse group of kids ever. And I mean, both my parents were pilots. Like I'm very fortunate. I never wanted for anything, but like I was in a whole new world. So that's when I got really into blow because they just had so much money. I mean, my best friend lived in the penthouse of the Scottsdale Princess
Wow.
by herself. So it's like that's all we did. I mean, just I was partying with Dennis Rodman, like,
Oh, yeah.
just
Oh, yeah.
nuts
And
at
cocaine
16.
is definitely the rich man's drug, although it's made a huge comeback. And it seems like a lot of people are doing it. I'm like, how are they affording that? It's definitely made a big comeback lately.
I know, but it's like even eggs are expensive. I think people are just
True.
trying to get used to it.
That's true too.
Um, yeah, I mean, I got really into meth, ironically, modeling. And I remember all those posters. Do you remember those advertisements where they're like, don't do meth, you'll look like this? And it was that woman, that poor woman that had like all the pox all over her
Mhm.
face. The first time I smoked meth, I was in the back of a limo with a bunch of playmates.
Mm.
And it was like, here, take a hit of this. You won't eat. And I'm like, awesome. Like
Yeah.
there wasn't even any stigma. I mean, now when you hear somebody doing meth, I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's like huffing paint. But back then, everybody in my world did that just, because we needed to not eat and it worked better than Coke.
Yeah.
because coke would wear off and then you would eat. Like you'd smoke meth, you would eat for a week.
Yep. Yeah, that was definitely my drug of choice too, for those exact reasons, as well as the production. Like, I could get so much done like 24/7. I'm doing like twice the work as everybody else.
I am amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. Look at how productive I am. I cannot be doing anything wrong.
Yeah, this can't possibly be bad for me. It's funny because I don't even eat gluten now. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, I can't believe I put that shit in my body.
Well, and that's the thing, is like you never knew what it was being mixed with, right? Sometimes it's baby aspirin, sometimes it's rat poison, sometimes it's like Comet. Like you never knew what they were mixing with that stuff.
Well, and then like the stuff that's supposed to be in it is bad enough, like formaldehyde. Like, oh God, so gross.
Yeah.
Terrible, terrible
Yeah.
ideas. But what was weird is that was easy for me to quit. One day I was like, yeah, I just don't want to do this anymore. Same with Coke. And I was like, yep, just don't want to. But alcohol, I could not stop. That was
Mm.
my ugh, downfall.
Yeah. Well, and what precipitated you wanting to finally quit alcohol?
Well, I was not one of those people in denial. I wasn't like, oh, I don't have a problem. It was so fucking obvious. I had a problem and I was really depressed. I hated myself. I wanted to quit. I couldn't quit. Like I was always trying to get better.
Mm.
And then it finally would happen. I'd modeled for a long time, just lingerie, swimwear, spokesmodeling. I got paid a ton of money for that. And then it just, I met a couple porn stars and then that came creeping in. And I always knew I would never do porn because there was a thought in my mind. I was like, one day I'm going to have a child.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want this to come back on me. So I never did like traditional porn, but I shot for Hustler and Penthouse. Like I came as close as possible to it. So I'm doing that. I'm dating one of the Chargers. I live in Newport Beach. I'm partying like the day before I went to rehab was Hef's 80th, So it's like I'm at the Playboy Mansion, just I mean, for some people, I'm sure that sounds like awful. For a lot of people, it's like, oh my God, that's so glamorous. I had just shot for FHM magazine. And I remember I woke up on the floor of my kitchen and I didn't know what day it was. And I was like, I'm going to kill myself. Like, not just an idea. I was like, I'm literally going to do it. So I called my mom and I said, I need to get out of this industry. I mean, the money was just so good. And it's fascinating because, like, I couldn't have had a normal job. I mean, I couldn't even drive. Like, I had a car come pick me up and take me to the studios.
Yeah.
And there, it was fine. It wasn't only just fine to be high, it was like encouraged. So, and then they're like, here's 10 grand cash. Because this was back before women wanted to just shoot for Playboy. Like this is back when women made money. I remember I was shooting a scene for Who Wants to Date a Playboy Model, and I asked the two girls in hair and makeup, I'm like, how much are you getting paid for this? And they're like, oh, we're not getting paid. We're doing this for free. And I was like, fuck, because then I just knew it was over. Then everybody's just going to do it for free. Nobody's going to make any money. So anyway, all of that had kind of transpired. I knew I was going to need to like actually get into the adult business. So I called my mom and I'm like, I got to go to rehab or I'm going to kill myself. And I did. And the rehab sucked. Like, I don't know if you've seen the business of recovery, but literally it was $90,000 AA.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it was. It was
That's our
AA.
competition. Yeah. Passages, Malibu, all those places. It's like you're literally just paying for like to have your bed made and a chef. Like there's no sustenance as far as like an actual program you're getting.
No, and as a matter of fact, the male therapist who helped me uncover being molested when I was 4, which you would be like, oh, okay, well, that's actually like something useful that would come from that.
Yep.
So the way marriage family therapy licenses work is you're not allowed to sleep with your clients for obvious reasons until 2 years after termination.
Yeah.
So I go to this bougie place. I'm really grateful I did because I didn't kill myself and I 100% would have. So while it wasn't helpful, it kept me alive. I relapsed, not long after. And then I started talking to the therapist who had helped me with my sexual trauma. I got sober again. I met this awesome guy. Like things were going well. 2 days exactly, or 2 years to the day, I get an email from this therapist like, I'm going to show you what a real man is and
Mm.
all this stuff. And that was it. I started drinking again. I was horribly suicidal. I don't want to blame it on him. Like I wasn't I wasn't in a good place anyway, but that threw me over the edge. So
Did
that
you
was
start
my
dating him, or was just the implication of it?
no, it's just the email and it just like my trust in men is
Yep.
so shit.
Yeah.
And anyway, that just broke me. And I'm like, I'll never fucking trust anybody again. I won't trust a therapist. I'll never tell anybody anything. I'll never fucking be vulnerable again because this is what happens. And my deepest wound is because of an early childhood sexual encounter that like sex is all I have to offer. And so then that
That's your self-worth.
happened.
That's your whole self-worth. Everything's tied up in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it really fucked me up for a long time.
Mm.
And then a series of events happened. I was violently raped. And I actually felt bad for myself. It was like the first time I was like, this really wasn't my fault. Like I wasn't drunk. I didn't do anything to cause this. It was actually it's the reason I got sober. And I went to Shadle, which is an aversion therapy.
Hmm.
It's closed now, which breaks my heart. Like my whole mission in life is to get one open again. I'm still in constant contact with the staff. Like we could do the protocols. We just need the funding. Because that place saved my life. I went in, it was 10 days. And I walked out and I never wanted to drink again. And it's 12 years later. And the shit that I have been through, like if anybody was going to relapse, like I would have done it. And I still to this day, I just hate alcohol.
Mm.
And so,
That's a good thing. Because the
oh,
second
thank
you start like glamorizing it
God.
again, or like, daydreaming, that's not good.
No, I mean that place, it really when I say it rewired my brain,
Yeah.
it just changed it. I never wanted it again. I never craved it. I never thought, "Oh, that'd be nice." I smell it and I still want to vomit. Like it saved my life. And that was 12 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Do you utilize that in your own? And I know you're a professor, so you don't counsel people personally, or do you?
so I stopped when COVID hit. I was a professor. We went online for 5 semesters and I was just over it. I didn't want to get vaccinated. I totally support whoever wants to get vaccinated, but the fact that they told me I had to, I was like, I quit.
Yep.
Like I'm not, I just, no, I wasn't going to do it. It didn't feel right. So my husband and I at the time owned a martial arts school in Reno.
Mm.
And we had like 700 students. And
Wow.
so when COVID hit and we got shut down, I was like, this is not coming back. What makes us special having 80 kids in a class is not coming back. And our overhead was massive. We had a massive space, tons of staff. I was like, we need to sell everything and just be done. And so we did.
Wow.
And what I didn't realize is when we sold our $1 million house and the $1 million building and the business, he put all of the money in an account I wasn't on. So we get down here to Mexico and we apply to residency. We buy a house in Cabo. And when we're sitting there getting residency, he qualified and I didn't.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, fuck, that moment where you're just like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot and
Yep.
I'm trapped.
Wow.
So yeah, then that kicked off the whole like last 2-year nightmare of my life. But I I remember I left the house and I ran into him like 2 weeks later, maybe. And he's like, "How are you?" You know? And I'm like, "Well, you have all of my money. You have my house. You have my car. You have my dogs. You have all my things.
Mm,
Literally, you have everything that I own." I'm like, "And I still left you." That's how I'm doing.
wow.
And it's still better than being with you.
Dang.
Yeah.
That would be
So,
hard for me to leave the dogs. Everything else I'd be like, okay, that's fine. But the dogs, that one's rough.
well, eventually I got one of them back, and his name is Rumi. I don't know if you're familiar with this Sufi poet,
Uh-uh.
Rumi. He's beautiful. He's the one that says the wound is the place where the light enters you.
Mm.
And he's my favorite poet, and that's my dog's name. And he's such a little shit. He's a Jack Russell terrorist. Like, he is not an easy animal. And he's been, yeah, that dog is everything. I'm so glad he's with me. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Isn't
And
it
I
funny?
have,
I have one who's super naughty too, but I just love him for it. I don't know why. It just cracks me up. And most people are like, dude, your dog's unruly. I'm like, I know. Isn't it funny? And it just makes me laugh. I don't know. I think if
I
I
know,
was to be a rebellious animal, I'd be like that.
absolutely. Yeah, my ex kept the golden retriever. She's a white English cream, so she
Mhm.
is a 40-pound white golden retriever, like literally the cutest animal you've ever seen, the happiest dog ever. She's never naughty, loves everyone. And I'm like, yeah, that's totally not my dog. You know, mine is the mischievous. We call him Houdini because that little mofo can get out of anything,
Yep.
like, and disappear. And I'm like, yeah, we're definitely kindred spirits.
Totally. That's mine too. Like in every way. He just he steals my chapstick. Like you cannot leave it out. He drinks my coffee. If I leave my coffee cup, he is in it drinking. Whatever it is, he's just like tormenting constantly. And again, I'm just like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
It doesn't even
totally.
upset me. I'm like, yeah, I know.
I understand, little
I totally get it. Yeah. Yeah. So so I guess you're just stuck until you're not. You're down there until you can finalize things. Do you have any recourse? Are you going to be able to like at least get your half, or you just have to walk away from it all?
Um, the good news is, and I'm just treading lightly legally what I'm allowed to talk about.
Mhm,
The
mhm.
bottom line is my name is on the house. We sold over $1 million home in Reno that my name was on. We bought this house together. So what needs to happen is get an appraisal and buy me out. I'm being
Yep.
super fucking cool. I don't want alimony, retirement. I don't want anything. Buy me out of the house that we bought together. So I just cannot believe that I won't be able to get that done. It just in Mexico takes forever.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'll get my house eventually, my half, because there's just no way. I mean, I'm going to compel him to sell it because his idiot ass thinks he's retired, but really he's just unemployed and he doesn't have the money to buy me out. So we're going to have to sell the house. And yeah, it's just going to take a while, but I am never stuck. Like, I am the queen of reinventing myself. I will
Mhm.
always land on my feet. So and I'm so lucky. Let me say this too, because that sounds like super egotistical. My parents would always have my back. Like, I'm never not going to be okay because my family loves me and they know I'm a good person and they're always going to step in and help me. Like, the day that he locked me out of the house. They couldn't get in, whatever. My neighbor came over and was like, here's $600. My parents were like, just wait, we'll wire your money, stay in our house. Like, I have so many resources. It's interesting. Like, this actually makes me cry. I think about the women, though, that don't have anybody. And there's so many women that are on their own and they have kids.
Yep.
I don't have kids with this asshole. Like, I was able to leave, but there are so many women that don't have the luxury of what I have, and my heart just breaks for them. And I swear to God, like if I somehow just manifest like $1 billion, I would start a charity that just provides free legal advice. And I'm not talking like free legal advice. I mean like killer attorneys that will go in there. I'm a fair person. I don't believe anybody should ever be destroyed. Like I always believe in equal division. But I would get attorneys that would represent women for free so that they could get out.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and that's why so many stay in really terrible situations because they don't have that and they don't have a way out. And even if they could, where would they go and what would they do? I've
Yeah.
had a lot of survivor women on the show, and it is a trap.
No, it's a nightmare. And then, you asked if I work with clients, I still do. And
Mhm.
yeah, I work with clients all the time, and you got to worry about your safety. You got to worry about your children. I mean, you're weighing a million options, and there's never a right answer. There's just the best answer for you. And I think for me, what's really sad is, as women, especially, our discernment, our intuition, it is so powerful, but it gets so corrupted by allowing these men literally into our bodies by pharmaceuticals, by, social media, by all of the ways, glyphosate, like you can go on and on and on and on and on. And we have been so cut from our discernment that if we can just get still enough, like we know. And I believe that. I believe we know. And I do. It's not pity, it is complete compassion for people that can't get out because, yeah, I can't even imagine if I didn't have my family.
Absolutely. Well, and I think it traces back to, like we talked about, there's just childhood trauma that, sinks into women, and it happens to men too, where they feel like they almost deserve this, or this is their lot in life. And it's not because of necessarily stuff they did, it's because of stuff that was done to them, and it lowers their self-worth, and that's what they attract. And narcissists just prey on that, like that. They know that's how those are the women to go after.
Well, yeah, and you have no self-esteem because you don't know who you are because you were never allowed to develop that, or
Yeah.
it's just been crushed or hijacked. And so you don't set any boundaries. And God forbid, you actually set one and then follow through, and then the repercussions of that, and then they just turtle right back up. And it's so natural. And I know women that hate themselves for not sticking up for themselves, but it's like, if you were to just zoom out and go, all right, let's look at this trauma timeline of what's happened to you. Yeah, I can predict exactly how you're going to respond.
Yep.
And it's biological, our fight, flight, freeze. It's spiritual, it's emotional. It's all of it. And there's there is a way out though. It just takes so much presence, which a
Yeah.
lot of people are not willing to do. That's why I drank.
Yeah.
I would not get present with my pain. I didn't know how to move it. I didn't realize that things wouldn't last forever. I didn't realize that when you actually feel your pain or a craving, that 90 seconds is when it's over. Like those are things that I was never taught.
Yep.
So
Well, and
yeah,
we get super comfortable with being uncomfortable. Like the fear of the unknown paralyzes people. So they'd rather just stay in this comfortable hell because that's what they know.
yeah, and we're organisms in homeostasis, and we'd rather stay in dysfunction than, God forbid, to be happy because we know how to survive it. And I think it goes so much deeper too. A
Mhm.
lot of times I work with people, and one of the ways that I determine whether or not I'll see them for therapy or not, because I don't do therapy, I do coaching. It's like, it's intense. We move. It's not like, oh, how do you feel about that? It's like, it's aggressive.
Yep.
So it's gotta be the right person. And one of the ways that I really assess is like, do they want to get better? Because a lot of people don't. They just don't.
100%. Hmm.
And that's okay. that's
Yeah.
okay. And I think that that can shift too. But I only work with people that actually want to get better because of my style. I know, like, I would damage someone that isn't ready.
Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. And that's why there's all kinds of different things out there. And I think for a lot of people, they just don't realize there's other means of help out there, especially like we talk
Right.
about the rehab world. They think AA and NA is the only way out. And it's like, well, it's not. But if you don't know better, you think that's it. And if you were unsuccessful with it, you're like, why would I even bother? I know this doesn't work for me. And so a lot of people don't try to find good treatment because they don't realize there's other stuff out there.
I can remember I was, in this $100,000 treatment facility, just going to AA 4 times a day. And I remember somebody looked at me and told me, if you don't stick with the program, then you're never going to stay sober. And I was like, well, then I guess I'm going to go get fucked up, because if I have to sit in these rooms and hear these same stories over and over again and keep telling myself that I'm an alcoholic and on and on and on, then this will never work for me. And what I want to say is I am so grateful for AA and NA. Millions of people have been helped by it, and thank God it exists, and it's free, and the community, and even the steps. Like, I think if every single person in the world worked the steps, we'd be in
Right.
a much better place. So I don't want to slam AA at all.
Yep.
And for me, it didn't work. And I was thinking about it the other day really heavily. My partner, who we just broke up, so we're not launching this, but we were going to do this thing called Recovery Remix, which was kind of an alternative to AA. But I thought, like, really, what is it about the steps that don't resonate with me? And the thing that hit me is this: we talk about defects of character, and we should know that, right? Like, I am constantly like, where am I out of alignment? Owning my shit, apologizing. I think it's brilliant, but it doesn't ask why. Why do those defects of character exist? It's just like, don't do it. That's like me telling an alcoholic, well, just stop drinking.
Yeah. Just say no.
Yeah.
Like Nancy Reagan
Okay.
told us in the 80s, just say no. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, it's that easy.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's all you need to do.
That's all we
Great.
got to do. Shit. Totally. Yeah. And I struggled with even just the very first premise. And this is why it didn't work for me is admit you're powerless. I'm like, am I? Am I powerless or am I kind of creating this? Like even back then when I was super fucked up, I knew it was me that was creating my own hell. And so to say, you're actually powerless, I just could never get on board with that.
Yeah. I think it is one thing to say, when I drink, I lose control, and I have no control once I start drinking. But to say I am, which is the most important 2 words that you can ever utter, and then to say powerless, no. I
Yeah.
mean, just like 100% no.
Right.
Uh, yeah.
Talk
I mean,
about
that's
limiting belief.
insanity.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Do you
it.
really want to drill that in? No.
Yeah. Well, and
Well,
like you said, even just the calling yourself an alcoholic every single day when you're not drinking and you haven't drank in 10 years, but you're still saying you're an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic. You're an alcoholic. Like, what does that do to you?
right. Yeah, I'm not an alcoholic. If I start drinking again, then guaranteed I'm an alcoholic again. If I took one sip of anything, 100% I'm an alcoholic again.
Yeah.
No, I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I'm somebody that used to drink too much. But yeah, the whole, I know people that have been drinking 23 years that are like, I'm still a fucked up alcoholic. And I'm like, wow, that is a crazy story. And the white knuckling, like the dry drunk syndrome, I will tell you, if I were in that space, I would be drinking,
Yep.
because a band-aid on a compound fracture it's just not the way to do it. And there's so many alternative treatments, but I'll tell you, I'm so frustrated with it right now. I am trying to help this beautiful boy get into treatment, and even now what I am seeing, they get in and they are immediately put on psych meds. They're all bipolar. I'm like, really? How are all of us bipolar? Just statistically, that seems impossible. That happened to me 20 years ago. I'm like, really? We're still doing that shit? I got put on Depakote, which is like
Mm,
a really intense mood stabilizer.
mhm.
And then they're giving people with addiction issues massive amounts of Xanax and a Klonopin, which we know work on the same receptors.
Yep.
And plus, that is meant for somebody in an active seizure. Like if I have an epileptic seizure, then give me an Ativan, give
Yep.
me a Klonopin, give me a Xanax. But we just pop them out like that's normal.
Yep. And
That
they're
was
putting everybody
actually
on Suboxone, even if they don't have an opioid problem. Now they're on Suboxone as well, on top of their mood stabilizer, their medicine to go to bed, their medicine to wake up, their all that shit. They go into rehab to get sober and they walk out on 10 different medications, calling themselves sober, but now they're drug dealers, just big pharma.
I just, yeah, like I don't know. And the sad thing for me is I know what worked for me, and it's not around anymore. I love the Meadows. Anything Peter Levine touched, who I is my favorite trauma specialist in the world. I've heard beautiful things about the Meadows. Ibogaine is phenomenal for opiate withdrawal. There's a clinic in Tijuana. I always hesitate to talk about a substance I have not done. I have not done Ibogaine, but I've heard for resetting those receptors, it is amazing. I am a huge proponent of psychedelic therapy when it is done set and setting with a therapist. I'm not talking about like taking a bunch of shrooms,
Yeah.
and hanging out with your friends. I mean, but like therapeutically processing trauma. What's so cool, what I've been able to witness is the somatic release that the body just releases the trauma that you cannot talk out of your mouth. I mean, that's where people will go into therapy and 10 years later, they're still telling the same story. So it's like all of a sudden you can move this out of your body. And you don't need psychedelics to do somatic therapy. I mean, there's the MDR, there's lots of ways. So I'm not saying, I mean, there's a lot of people that should not do psychedelic therapy. But I do think we need to start really exploring that as an option. And it's cool to see maps and all the research coming
Mhm.
out. But with MDMA, if I flood myself with feel good chemicals and then I tell my trauma, now I am re imprinting an emotion that is positive with my negative story.
Yeah.
And that is what we know, really is the basis of trauma. And it's interesting because just like we relive negative stories, right? And our heart rate, beats and cortisol and adrenaline dumps, which means serotonin and dopamine shut off and everything. Well, the opposite is true too. When we can recall those good events and everything, the brain thinks it's happening in real time. So it's like there's skills we could be teaching people. And I don't know. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I just feel for people. Like if I were looking for treatment right now and I didn't have money, I'd be scared.
Well,
Just
that's
straight
why
up.
places like My Rehab exist, because that's what we specialize in.
So tell me about that because I need a place to refer people to.
So, like you mentioned, the first thing that when people come into our program is we medically detox them, but it's about a week-long process. It is not the duration of their program. They do their entire program completely drug-free. So we immediately have them doing mindfulness. We have them exercising, because when you take away all the drugs and the alcohol, all those hormones are kind of whacked. They can't sleep. And so we
Yeah.
immediately implement like sunshine walks, but also exercise. So I have yoga or CrossFit, mandatory part of the program. They do that 5 to 7 days a week to
Nice.
get everything working normally. We also educate them on nutrition, because so many people are depressed, but they eat like crap. They're eating a shit ton of sugar, especially when they come into rehab. They're eating
Yeah.
tons of sugar, crappy foods, process this, and so we try to educate them on, let's look at your diet first before you think, you have like you said bipolar or all these like conditions. And so many people that come to us have been diagnosed and labeled as kids. You have ADHD, you have this, you have that, they were put in boxes. And when we take them off all of that and all that stuff starts working normally, they're learning mindfulness, they're meditating every day. They start to realize, I don't want to say the lies, but they realize the programming that put them on the path to becoming addicts. And a lot of it was done by doctors, by parents, by peer pressure. And so, the first thing that we do after they get through their detox is we handle that trauma, because we all have it. Addicts in general all have some childhood trauma. And so we just deep dive straight into that first thing. Let's discover, why using substances became a solution to your problem. We sort of rewind things. We get them to recognize patterns in their life of when they're more apt to do it. And we have an entire copyrighted curriculum to really, like you said, in a loving and compassionate way, but also help them take accountability and responsibility for the actions that they took as a solution to whatever trauma they were dealing with. So we have an entire program that's aimed at, handling all this stuff in body, mind, and spirit, like you talked about, hitting every single one of those, because you have to, in my opinion, you have to fix all three of those, or even four if you want to add in emotion as one of those cornerstones. If you don't handle all of that, you're going to go back and do the exact same things. So, we work with them on their aftercare before they even leave, set them up for success. Don't go back into the same environment expecting different results, make amends to your family. There are some premises that, all rehab should have: write up your transgressions,
Sure.
And then make amends to the people, rebuild your relationships, identify toxic people, because so many people have people they think are their friends or their allies, and they're not. They're the ones that are subconsciously saying and doing this stuff that's sort of keeping people down. And so getting away from that and recognizing that and realizing that. So we hit it from every single angle that you could possibly hit it at. So at the end of the program, which is like, our full program is almost 67 days, or we have our 30-day. But at the end of it, they've been removed long enough to be able to objectively look at things and fix everything so that when they go back, they have like a whole war chest of tools to be able to succeed in life.
Nice. That's
drug-free,
awesome.
not on 50 medications and labeled bipolar and everything else. They are 100% drug-free, and that's how they re-enter the world.
I love it. That's amazing. Very cool. Good to know. Very good to know.
Yeah, but I've actually myself started doing some somatic therapy this work, because you were mentioning the fight, flight, or freeze. And, we can even, have many years of doing well and sobriety, but there's still stuff. It's just like layers of an onion. You don't even realize it's there until all of a sudden it's there, and you realize you've started doing these. And it's like a self-defense mechanism. And I was afraid to let a lot of stuff go. But I'm like, because of these walls, this is why I've stayed safe. And it's like, yes, but you're also blocking good things from coming in because you're protecting yourself. You kind of can't do both. And so it's been like, for me, a process of recognizing and calming my central nervous system and seeing what, triggers that and working through that stuff.
Beautiful. Yeah, that is, I remember this was like recently too. This was not back in the day when I was first getting sober. I literally had to look at like one of those charts, with the different faces on it, that with the emotion. Because I'm like, I don't even know what I'm feeling. There's the obvious ones. Like when I'm enraged, everyone knows it. Joy, all of it. But I'm like, man, what am I, is it shame? Is it like, what am I feeling? And then how does that feel in my body?
That's
Really.
hard for me. It is so hard for me to identify a feeling of emotion in my body. Like I struggle with that.
I've been working with a coach for a year on it, and I still sometimes, but it's getting better. It is getting better. And it's funny because, when a kid like falls or something and they cry and the mom's like, take a deep breath. It's like, that's really it. And then all the research we're seeing now that if we take 6 deep breaths, like truly pause and breathe, we will reset, vagal nerve, fight, flight, freeze, all the chemicals return. 6 deep breaths is all it takes. And it's very, very fascinating to me. I got really interested in Sebastian Junger's work. He is a war correspondent. So
Mm.
he, I mean, he's on the front lines of like some of the scariest shit you could ever imagine. But he got to the point where there was a suicide bomber walking towards him. Like he's going to die. And the cameraman pans to him and there's just nothing. There's just apathy. And he's like, I knew that's when I needed help. And he tried everything. And it was finally MDMA therapy that helped him realize what the freeze response was. And what it was he didn't believe that he deserved to be helped. So it was beyond survivor's guilt. It was like that he didn't deserve to not die. And so I don't know, man. It's just like when we start being honest and we start talking about this kind of stuff, and when, I get on with my group of people and say, yeah, I was molested when I was younger. And the hardest part was when it stopped. And some other little girl told, and I didn't because I never tell on people because I'm a good girl, because I didn't want to make him mad at me. And then the biggest fear and hurt was that he started doing it to somebody else. And so then I believed that sex was love. And so I started sleeping around and doing things that I would never do sober. Like the more, and I've obviously done a lot of work, and I can hold whatever criticism or backlash comes at me. So I'm not at all like encouraging people to do that. I think the Me Too movement was beautiful in so many ways, and like, oh my freaking God, so damaging. So many women came out and said this happened to me, and then nobody knew what to do with it. So they were totally invalidated. They felt re-victimized. It was awful. So in my case, where I've really done a lot of work, I'm sure there's still more to do. I think it's useful for someone like you, where you're at in your life, to share these things, because then it's like you are not alone. There's a reason. And then there's always these lessons, man, these beautiful lessons. Like I went to Auburn University and spoke, and I was talking about, I didn't get into detail, like I was raped. That's the first time I felt compassion for myself. That's how I got sober. And afterwards, this young girl came up to me and she goes, I'm so, so happy that happened for you, but I was raped and I hate myself. And it never even occurred to me to like also address that part too.
Yeah.
So it's just this constant learning.
Yeah.
I did my TED talk on rewriting the story of addiction and finding the beauty in addiction. So I'm like, find the beauty in trauma. Well, the organizers at TedX, they put the woman whose son was shot in the head at Sandy Hook right after me. And I was like,
Oof.
thanks a lot. So this was back in 2015. And she came up to me afterwards and she's like, you're an amazing speaker. That was so inspiring. Thank you for your talk. She goes, but like, how am I supposed to find the beauty in my son getting shot in the head? And at that time in my life, I was not ready to respond to that. So I froze and I just gave her a hug and I just said, I'm so sorry. It was the only thing I knew how to say. Now, what I wish I would have said to her is, the beauty is in the fact that that little boy lived every single day of his 6 years knowing he was loved. Like,
Mm.
I can feel your love for him. Like, he knew he was loved.
Yeah.
The beauty is in your willingness to share your story.
Yep.
The beauty is in your willingness to connect with other parents and help them through it. The beauty, you know what I mean? Like, I just, at that time, I knew it was true, and truth is always true, but I didn't know how to articulate it. But I really think when we get to a place of safe vulnerability and we get to the place where people have earned our story, meaning we're careful with our audience and we're careful with ourselves, knowing whether or not we're in a place to share vulnerably or not. It's like, man, we really, really should, because people go, oh, okay, that makes sense. Like, I learn from people all the time.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so critical, which is where it's like so cool what you're doing with your podcast.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you for that. But I feel like, you know, we have parents come up and they listen to, you know, the clients and they're overcoming and they're like, I feel like everybody should do this. And so, like you talked about, the beauty of addiction is it forces, well, it doesn't force, because you're not going to get anywhere when you force somebody to get better. However, when they finally get to a point where they're willing to receive the help and do the work, there's so much that comes out of that. Whereas if you've lived a very, you know, normal upbringing, not a lot of adversity, not a lot of good, bad, or other, you've left a normal, whatever that is, normal life. There's not been that opportunity to deep dive like all the stuff, which is where all the growth comes in, because everything's just kind of gone smooth for you. So I definitely feel like those of us who've overcome some massive adversity, whether it's addiction, whether it's losing, you know, a child or something like that, there's so much growth that comes from that pain and that adversity, that you do end up in a much better place because life gave you those opportunities to learn and grow.
Yeah, I mean, how would you ever know you're resilient if you never had a challenge? It was interesting. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he's dating a young girl. And then I said, yeah, it seems like you guys really click, getting along. He's like, yeah, but nothing's ever happened to her. Like, there's no depth, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and it's true. It's like that's what makes us deep. And also, I mean, I look at it this way. If there was a video game and you just passed every level, there was no bad guys, no shit to jump over, no flames being thrown at you, and you just passed every level, would you play it? No, of course not. I mean, it's that everybody gets a trophy thing. It means shit. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like
Unlimited lives, do whatever, doesn't matter. Yeah.
yeah, it's like our adversity is really, I mean, it's so important. Now, there needs to be a balance, right? Like we can't just lose every time. There needs to be some wins in there. But the other thing that I really it hit me the other day because I thinking about launching my own business is scary. And running a business doesn't scare me. Learning to run a business scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
There's just so much I don't know. I'm like, what is the phone? You gotta be kidding me, right? So I was thinking about it though, and like, what is failure? And the people to me that are like really spectacular, they just never gave up. They're like, there's no such thing as failure because I'm just gonna keep doing it until I succeed. And my favorite example is Walt Disney. So Walt Disney went and he asked for a loan and they laughed at him. And they said, no way, that will never work. No one will ever, ever, ever give you the money to build Disneyland. So he went the next day and same thing. Nobody's ever going to give you the money. Went the next day, the next day, the next day, the next day, next day, next day, next day, next day, next day. Now we're on day 12. Can you imagine coming home to your partner and being like, I swear to God, this is going to work. 12 people have told me no, but it's going to work. So he goes again. Day 30, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Okay. 27 days later, still everyone has said, no, you're an idiot. It's never going to work. Finally, on the 31st day, someone was like, okay, let's see if it works. And now it's Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For him, it was like failure was not an option. So I believe whether it's sobriety, whether it's getting out of a shitty marriage, whether it is doing what I did. It's funny because everyone's like, oh my God, how do you just move to Cabo? I'm like, well, you just do. You figure it out. Like, there is no such thing as failure. You just keep pivoting until something works. And I've had a million things not work. marriages, relationships, businesses. I can't even tell you how many times it has not worked. But then a lot of stuff has.
Yeah.
And I have a really good life. So, you know, when you decide and something is really, really important to you, it's like, yeah, keep doing it. You didn't fail. You just didn't do it yet.
Yeah. Well, and there's always, for me, and luckily I've been around a long time, so I've had a lot of experience in seeing this from the other side. Sometimes it didn't work because there was a bigger purpose. There was something better or different that was supposed to happen. And so when you become so attached to an outcome, you could be shorting yourself of something that was better that's supposed to be happening.
I wanted to get pregnant so bad. So I left my ex-husband in 2020. And then what he did is so interesting because me and his ex-wife talked, which is that's actually a cool experience. Because then you're like, oh shit, that happened to you too. So he wrote me this long letter. I love you. I want to have a baby, you know, all the shit, right? So I ended up getting back together with him and moving to Mexico. Like we got the health insurance for pregnancy. I was on prenatals. Like I wanted a baby more than anything in the world. And then it was like, I'm not ready yet, or maybe next month, or he was a hypochondriac. Like there was always something wrong. Oh my God, my kidney hurts. Like there was always a reason. And then all of a sudden, a year had gone by. Our health insurance is up for renewal. And he's like, yeah, I don't think we should do the pregnancy one. And just left it at that with no, and I already kind of knew I was going to leave him at that point. So I let it slide. But I think back to how bad I wanted a baby. And thank God for unanswered prayers. I would have never been able to leave him. I would have never left a child in a house with him. Same thing with my ex, my current, you know, like I got together with somebody I thought was freaking awesome. We were about to launch 2 dope businesses together. Like I can't even tell you how cool. I wanted him more than anything in the world, and then found out all this shit. And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I'm still processing the hurt like a lot, but I could feel the smallness of my life if I had stayed with him. I could feel it, you know? So
Yep.
I think that's an important part too. It's like when we don't get what we want, it's like, how could you think that God doesn't know better than you, or love, or the universe? Or I know the term God has a lot of negative connotations for people, but love, whatever you want to say. How could you ever believe that you know better? Because even for me, I could have never envisioned my life nearly as awesome as it is. Even as in shambles as it might be right this very moment, it is 100,000 times better than I could have ever imagined. I could have never thought up of the cool plot twists that happen. So it's like wherever you're at, just remember you have no idea what's coming.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where the magic of gratitude comes in, because instead of fixating on all the things that aren't going right, if you like get yourself into that place of like, but look at all the cool shit that is going right, and sort of reframing everything. And then it brings your whole vibration up, and then more good things happen because you're focusing on the good, not the bad. Like there's
Yeah.
so much to it that um and I don't want to say it's common knowledge, but it's just like, and a lot of it we've learned because of our addiction and overcoming that and just successful things. But finding, like you said, the beauty or the good things in the bad things is the beauty. Like finding that silver lining, finding that glass half full. Like for me, I feel like that's the key to everything.
Yeah. It is for sure. And it's it can be so difficult, you know, when you start collecting so much evidence that's contrary. There's a video, I think if you Google oldest Holocaust survivor optimism, it will come up. But they ask her, I think she was like 108. This woman
Wow.
lived through the camps. And they said, what is the key to life? And she said, optimism. You have to be happy. And the problem is we have created a life, and this is Tony Robbins stuff that I love, the blueprint that says I can only be happy as long as. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I drive this car. I'll be happy when I get my promotion. It's like, or you could just be happy now. Like, it's all an illusion. Like, none of that is true. I mean, that is social programming, that is advertising, that is billionaires getting rich off you hating yourself. Like, you can just be happy now.
Yeah. Well, and there's just, like you said, so much of this programming, and it feels like it's just gotten worse and worse and worse over the last few years, with just nothing but doom and gloom, and you're a victim and you have this problem and you're that problem. If you watch TV or social media, it just purposely pushes you down, and you've got to like be willing to break free of all that stuff and see the truth behind it. And I think you innately see that. I do as well. But a lot of people get very trapped into that as like, this is how I'm supposed to be. And it's not.
Yeah. It's not. And I think too, that comes from, I was trapped in hell from age 12 to 29.
Mm-hmm.
I will not put myself back in that again. Like,
Yeah.
period. I just won't.
Yeah.
So I don't participate in that. I don't want to act like I'm ignorant, but I control my space the
Yeah.
best that I can. And that's all I can do.
And so what does your daily routine look like? Is it meditation? Is it exercise? I know you said you don't even eat gluten. Obviously, there's like a health component. Is there
Yeah.
praying or faith? What is it? What is your routine?
I do like to mix mine up, because that was like one of the things I hated about AA is the monotony of it. I'm like, you want me to read the same thing every day?
Yeah.
Like,
That's why I crossed it. I'm like, I cannot do the same thing twice in a row ever.
yeah, I'm gonna mix up my workouts, sometimes Pilates, sometimes boot camp, sometimes I'll put on chains and run, sometimes I'll do yoga. Like, I'm gonna mix it up. Meditation, sound healing has been huge for me, especially recently. And cacao ceremonies,
Mhm.
those are really big. I'm going to bring him up again, which is funny because I know a lot of people hate Tony Robbins. I shouldn't say hate, but they don't like resonate with him. But some of his stuff is brilliant. And he has it's Tony Robbins morning priming. And the background is purple. Do the purple one, because it's got this music behind it that I swear, I don't know like what resonance it's at, but it's phenomenal. And
Mm.
it's the same stuff we all know to do: your gratitude practice, your energy work, your, whatever, your intentions for the day. But I like doing that one a lot. Right now, I'm super fortunate. I am renting my favorite place, like right on the water. Like, I have an infinity pool that
Nice.
looks right out over the arch of Cabo. And I sit out there and I stream about my life and what I want. And I do pray, but yeah, like movement, eating well, connection is huge for me.
Mhm.
I do spend time alone, and I journal. I am of service. I work with clients, but like, yeah, my friends are amazing.
Yeah.
So, those are the things that I do to help myself. And when I'm not doing well, yeah, like I go sit with ayahuasca and get my ass kicked for a while, that works for me.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, those are the things, and they seem so basic. I also admit when I'm wrong, and I really watch my martyrdom. Like, anytime I'm blaming somebody else, which is one of my shadows, I'm very good at it, is like, how do I reframe this? Like, my ex, okay? So he did something. I told him, if you do this, if you violate this boundary, I'm going to break up with you. And he did it and then lied about it and then blew up our whole lives, right? So my inclination it is to be like, poor me. It really is like, you did this to me, and oh my God. Instead of being like, wow, I let him violate my boundaries twice. And the first time he did it, instead of slowing, not dumping thousands of dollars into companies, not moving in together, not whatever, pausing, waiting, like, let's see what happened. No, I went all in, and then I got screwed. So it's like, where can I take ownership? But what I
Yeah.
don't like that I see a lot in the new age spiritual community is it's not victim blaming, it's just like straight up bullying. I mean, just bullshit.
Mm,
Everything is yours. No, sometimes bad shit happens to people, and we should talk about that.
yeah.
And not everything is a karmic echo or an ancestral imprint or the spiritual bypassing of the new age community, like, literally makes me want to vomit. And I'm a very spiritual person, but yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
I get
not.
it because I'm that person that the philosophy that I utilized when I got into recovery was full accountability and responsibility to the point where even my executive director wanted me to take ownership for having been molested at 5 years old. I'm like, okay. But he's like, that's how it ceases to have control on you. So I totally understand what you mean. And so for me, that's always my go-to. What did I do to create this, bring it in? And it's like, you know what? Sometimes good people just have bad shit happen to them. Okay. So now instead of what did I do to create this, what do I need to learn from this?
I'm still like in shock that somebody said that to you.
I know. And I actually believe that way. I was like, okay, I guess, yeah, I could see how this could work, but that was really like my programming. And I've really, in the last several years, finally gotten around people who've helped me work through that kind of stuff of like, actually, you didn't necessarily deserve that. That wasn't your doing. Bad shit
Yeah, of
happened.
course you didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, it comes down to like, you aren't responsible for what happened to you, but you are 100% responsible for healing it because
Yeah.
it's your life.
Yeah.
And you deserve a good life. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to feel loved and connect and, feel safe. Like, so that is always our responsibility. But
Yeah.
no, 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 no. I mean, like, yeah, we've just taken it too far.
Taking it too far. Like you said, it's too much. But I do believe there also has to be you have to be aware of who you're trusting with your stuff because it can, like what happened with you, be used against you, or people whose intentions aren't the best aren't necessarily going to guide you in the best possible way. So it's
Right.
really important to be around and have people who are going to help pull that out of you, the limiting beliefs, all the dumb shit that we believe, and actually proactively come up with like truth that is real and not more harmful.
And also not like put people on pedestals,
Mm-hmm.
I think happens a lot with therapists or with coaches or, any kind of healer, right? And it's like, no, I make mistakes all the time. Like,
Yeah.
the other day, I blew a gasket. It's such a high level. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think that was still possible in me. So it's like we make mistakes, but to me, it's always about the repair. And then again, not doing it.
Yes.
It's, but
Why is it
it's,
so hard for people just to admit when they make a mistake, though? Like for me, it's like
I don't know.
maddening. It's like, dude, it's okay. We're not perfect. Like we are humans. Like we fuck up. Like why is it so hard for some people? I mean, I'm being rhetorical here because I know a lot of people don't because there's some like underlying fear that if they admit they're wrong, it unravels all their whatever. But it's hard when you see people who just won't say, yeah, fucked up. Sorry.
Well, and even in a situation like my ex, I told him there was a boundary, he broke it. And I said, all right, this is it. You get one more shot.
Mm.
He broke it again. But if he had just looked at me and said, I need help, like I am so sorry I did this. I can't believe it. I'm so sorry. Like, what can I do? Is there any way? Is there any way that like I can go therapy or I can whatever? You know, that's a different conversation than, oh, it didn't happen that way. And the gaslighting and the bullshit and the minimizing and the whatever. Like the second somebody starts to do that to me, I'm like, shut up, out of my car. Because I'm
Mm,
not going to give you an opportunity to lie to my face, because that's when I know I'm going to snap, is when I am gaslit and lied to and made to feel crazy. And then it's about me being angry instead of the behavior that you did. And I hate that shit. And it happens to women all the time.
yeah. Do you feel like you've finally broken that pattern?
No, no, it literally just happened the other day. And yeah, but I mean, so the pattern I did break though was taking, like, I didn't make myself wrong. I was like, no, you set a boundary. No, that's not true. No, it's this way. Um, and I was calm initially. And then getting lied to, that's where I started to get really upset. And then I finally was like, don't give him a chance. Why am I participating? Just walk.
Yeah.
And that is my lesson. It's hard because, you know, romantic relationships, especially like the love of my life, like my favorite human on the entire planet, was very difficult. But it's, for me, what I would do differently if I were able to just perfectly execute it, I would have just said, you knew the rules. It's obvious that you're not willing to look at this, and we're done.
Yeah.
That's ideally what I would have done.
Yeah. Well, and are you a believer that you're going to just keep getting dealt this lesson over and over in all these different forms until you get it right? Quote unquote,
Always.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, we always do
Yeah.
until we get the lesson. But I'm pretty sure I got the lesson, because for me, I realized the deeply rooted belief that I think men are only interested in me for sex. Therefore, I attract in very sexually inappropriate men. Very, you know, their sexual energy is just scattered sloppy all over the place,
Yeah.
because that was my belief.
Yeah.
So my hope is I'm going to stop dating for a while and work on that a bit before I start dating, until I don't believe that about myself anymore, which is, and again, it's all unconscious because
It
I
is.
know who I am. Like, I love myself. I genuinely do. I work with people all the time and we look at the core belief of like, are you, I don't even want to say good or bad, but you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I genuinely love myself. I am so proud of myself for who I am. I know I'm such a good person. Like, I don't want to sound narcissistic and just sit here and say all my qualities, but it's like, I know what I bring to the table. And yet, that belief is still under the surface, driving everything. It doesn't matter, you know, and we know that. We know 90% of behavior is unconscious.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, that's my work.
I love that. I feel like you're like me. You know, I've been around, especially in the spiritual community, the last couple of years, and there's people who you know they like to chip away at the surface, but like I like to go deep and dark. Like let me get in that shadow side. Like let's go. And I thought everybody was that way, and it's like no, they're definitely not. There's layers. Some people cannot like go straight to it, and I'm like as painful as it could possibly be. Let's dig that thing out of there. Let's go. And not everybody's able to necessarily do that, at least out of the gate. It's definitely a process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know. I love that shadow side. For me, it's just fascinating. I want to know what I don't know. I already know what I know. Now let's see what I don't know. What's driving the shit that I can't figure out? Like let's figure that stuff out.
Yeah, that's where it gets interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was
Totally.
interesting. We were talking earlier about maps and everything, and I had no idea like the power of. We were talking about psychedelic therapies, like of mushrooms in particular, with the rewiring, the neuroplasticity. Like that's a literal scientific thing of rewiring that you would never. For myself, I never even knew was possible. So I find all that work fascinating. And I know like Joe Dispenza, I was going to ask you about him. He does a lot of that, minus the mushrooms, but there's a lot of that rewiring of that neuroplasticity and the way our belief systems are, and all utilizing, heart coherency.
Yeah, I mean, HeartMath Institute has done amazing work. Joe Dispenza. One of the things that I love about psilocybin is that you can microdose it. So, some heroic dose, especially if there's any history of schizophrenia or any co-occurring disorder, um, I would steer clear of that. But you can microdose psilocybin, meaning it's under the threshold of you even feeling it and it's working. And I love how Michael Pollan described it. It's like there's a ski slope with all these tracks, right? All these wirings, all these patterns, all these ways of being. And what psilocybin really does is it goes in and it kind of helps smooth out those tracks. Like we have an opportunity to do it different. And that is to me like just the best gift ever. And we're starting to see a lot of places decriminalize mushrooms, which is huge.
Is it legal down there in Cabo?
Um, it's weird. Like even weed isn't legal, but it's not illegal because they never renewed the law. So who knows?
It's like the
I
Wild
mean,
West.
Cabo, like anything goes. Which, speaking of it, this is fascinating, and I just have to say it because everyone's like, "Oh my god, all the fentanyl is coming from Mexico, killing everyone." Like when I'm in downtown Cabo, I can walk around and be offered everything, and I mean anything, everything I want, like Percocet, oxys, MDMA, blow, whatever I want. So think about how many hundreds of thousands of people come down here for spring break,
Mhm.
buy drugs. There's not a single overdose. Like if an American kid overdosed down here in Cabo, everyone would know about it. It's not
Yeah,
happening.
interesting.
So why is it happening so much in the States? It's just something to think about.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it is happening, and it's not by accident, and it's yeah, it's not good.
No, it's terrible. And yeah, so I mean, when it comes to mushrooms, though, I think it's everybody should watch. Anybody that's interested in them should watch Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. It is done so beautifully, like high quality. Paul Stamets he's brilliant scientist. You'll really understand the mycelium network and the way it works within the body, the mind, and then the interconnectedness of us all. I mean, like that whole we are one thing is not just bullshit. And it explains why. It's really important that you know who you get your mushrooms from. A, they're temperamental, like the humidity is off 1 degree or anything air gets in, bacteria. It's mushrooms are exceptionally difficult to grow if you don't know what you're doing. But it's also because their energy, it's like whoever is growing them,
Hmm.
that energy is going into you as well. So it's really, really important to be careful.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I'm a big concert goer, and one of the guys that works for me, we've been going to shows together for like 10 years. And we went to a big festival in Sacramento for 4 days. And to get to our parking lot, you had to go under this bridge. And there was like a whole table set up. And I was shocked. Like you said anything and everything, big old bottles of mushrooms, this and I'm like, I don't know that if I were using, I'd be wanting to get my mushrooms from a guy under a bridge at a concert. Like, you don't know what the heck you're getting, but it's become so common that it's just and like you said, almost like decriminalized, that it's just there, it's everywhere, and that's kind of frightening in itself, because you know that it could be utilized in not the best way, where it could do more harm than good.
Yeah, and I mean that's where it's just so stupid to me. I mean, it's one thing to decriminalize it, which I mean, most cops aren't gonna bust somebody for mushrooms anyway, but like we should legally be able to purchase that. That's absolute insanity. You cannot get addicted to mushrooms. They're inherently unaddictive. Like if I use them today, I can't use them tomorrow. I can buy cigarettes,
Yeah.
I can buy alcohol, but I can't buy mushrooms that have been grown legally to help me heal. That's how you know the them. We won't get into the them. Ain't concerned about your health.
Yeah.
Take these pills. This kid I was trying to help get into a treatment facility, he's on 5 medications. I hadn't even heard of half of them. That's how many new ones. I mean, it's just sick. And they lie and they kill people and they pay their $300 million fine and then they go make $3 billion and that's that. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that people shouldn't be on medication. Like if something legitimately helps people, I'm not all about quality of life. But when we are pumping people full of things that should not be taken long term, like that's criminal.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
criminal.
Well, and convincing them they need it in order to have quality of life, and it's not the case. Like I said, when we get people, they are coming in, they're so overly medicated and being called sober. It's like so confusing. And it's like, how are we as society okay with this and believing this?
Well, and they don't know shit about it either. I mean, at first they were like, oh, the problem with depression is there's way too much serotonin. So the first antidepressant medications actually took away all your serotonin. Can you even imagine?
Yes.
Like, they don't know anything about it. Furthermore, it's not made in your brain, it's made in your gut. Like, they don't know anything. And the DSM, really, it's a book. I can't draw your blood and tell you you're bipolar. All of these different things, I'm not saying they're not real experiences, but they are ways of responding to stress. And so you get a bunch of doctors, and everybody was like, you're not a real doctor. And they're like, yeah, we are. And so they wrote a fucking book so that insurance can get paid. And now people believe they are XYZ.
Well, that's why the whole 30-day program was put into existence, was because that's how long insurance would pay for. So the whole magic of AANA 28 days, it's not because that's a magic day. It's just that's how long insurance would pay to have somebody in treatment. It was
Right.
all driven by, insurance and pharmaceuticals. Again, it's just like all part of, them controlling an industry, a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah.
My first client that I ever worked with was sold into prostitution at age 8.
Oh,
She had no skills. This woman was 28. She'd been on meth for 18 years, basically. She lived with her boyfriend that made meth. You can only imagine the abuse. And she was there 28 days. And I'm like, okay. And then, of course, she's court ordered. So then she relapsed, and they're like, oh my God, she relapsed. I'm like, no shit, she relapsed. Of course. Like, I don't know. The system is so screwed up, but yeah, we're going to waste $14 billion trying to stop drugs coming into the country. In 2007, we gave Colombia $14 billion to stop Coke from coming into the country. The next year, it was twice as cheap and like 7 times more available. So we can sit here and talk on about the war on drugs, the war on this, the war on that, whatever. But the reality is it's not working. And we need to be asking, why do people want to use at that level? Carl Hart has a ton of research out on this. We need to be asking, what can we be doing for real treatment? We need to be asking, how do we help people instead of allocating resources to stopping drugs, which people are going to do whether they are illegal or not. Like, drugs are always going to come in the country. Half the time we fly them in, but that's another conversation. It's like that is such a waste of resources when we could be using that money to actually help people. And you look at Portugal, you look at Switzerland, we're starting to see it with Oregon when you decriminalize. I mean, Oregon's brilliant. We're going to decrim all drugs, literally all of them. They just kind of like randomly came up with quantities that you could have, which is weird, but doesn't matter. So I get caught with drugs. I go see a counselor. If I can't pay for it, the state will. They do an assessment. Am I sick? Am I not? Am I addicted? Am I not? Okay, great, cool. Pay a fine, go on your way. Oh, we'll help you get treatment. That seems like a better way to do it. The last time I said that, somebody literally looked at me and said, well, doesn't that encourage drug use? I'm like, to who? The people already doing drugs? When I was at the university, I went on News Channel 4 and I said, it's really important that you test your drugs. And I got in trouble again because I'm encouraging drug use. I'm like, no, I'm encouraging safe drug use for people that would already do it. Like, if they made meth legal right now, people are not going to go do it.
Mm.
They're just not. Like, kids, yes. When you start legalizing things, we see an increase in adolescent use. That's a big freaking problem. 100%. Like, that's a big deal. But throwing people in jail, all that does is ruin their lives. They don't get better. They meet better drug dealers.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the deal. We have laws in place for criminals. So if I'm a heroin addict and I steal your car to go buy more heroin, the crime is grand theft auto and I'm going to jail. The fact that we arrest consenting adults because the substance they use is illegal, deemed illegal by some idiots that put Schedule 1 drug, weed, and meth as the same, like idiots that don't even know what they're doing. But you're going to go to jail because the substance that you, as a consenting adult, choose to use is illegal. Now we're going to ruin your life.
Well, and like we talked about, are those drugs much different than the drugs we could get legally prescribed by doctors? Adderall. I mean, how many kids are put on Adderall, which is basically legal speed? So
one molecule away.
Exactly. So again, where do you draw the line? Where do you say this is okay, but this isn't okay? You having a prescription totally makes it okay for you to be on speed. And by the way, your doctor's getting kickbacks. And by the way, pharmaceutical company is, pushing this agenda. So yeah.
Yeah, it's just so sad. And it's the people, it's always the innocent people that are victimized. And the governments and the pharmaceutical companies and the lobbyists and everybody else that benefits. I mean, whether it's war, pharmaceuticals, any of this bullshit, it's always the innocent people that get caught in the crossfire. And it's just, I don't know, at some point we have to wake up. And my understanding is 15% of us is all it takes to say we've had enough of your shit. No. And they can't anymore. So it's like, how do we wake up?
By having podcasts like this, where hopefully, something resonates and people go, holy shit, okay, I'm not alone. Or there is more of us that think this way, or we should all maybe start thinking that this is happening and just becoming aware of it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there how do our listeners find you? What are you doing now? Are you taking on more clients?
I am taking on I have one spot available for one-on-one therapy, and I'm always available for speaking. I love universities. That's kind of my jam. I love college students so much. JoWeatherford.com is a good place to reach me, or on social media, Jo Weatherford. You can always DM me. I'll send you any resources, answer any questions. But yeah, so that's the best place.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been an amazing guest. We kind of went all over the place, but that's kind of how I like to do it too.
It's so fun, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
is. It is. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed meeting you, and thank you for the work that you do in the world.
Aw, thanks.